Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first installment of our new podcast by Strand Life Sciences. While we plan to make this a monthly podcast where we speak to industry experts about topics in precision medicine, today we thought we'd start with a little explanation of who we are here at Strand, um, our goals and aims, and how we've adapted to the pandemic. My name is Sakshi Shingle. I'm one of the associates here in the business development team, and I'll be joined by Radhakrishna Bedapura, or RK, the head of business development. RK finished his PhD in computational from biology from UT Austin. He's worn a couple of hats here at Strand, including as a senior software engineer and director of bioinformatics before moving to the business development team. Hi, RK. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Sakshi. It's great to be here. I look forward to this first installment of our podcast.
Me too. So let's jump right into it. Strand Life Sciences is a precision medicine solutions company based here in Bangalore, India. Started 20 years ago, nearly to the day, by a group of professors from the Indian Institute of Sciences. It's evolved from a primarily bioinformatics company to one that provides a host of solutions to pharma, biotech, research, and many more companies in the medical space. Given our background, we have vast experience in creating a bunch of many different types of solutions, including Omics platforms, which you may have heard of, such as GeneSpring, which was an Agilent product, and Strand NGS. So I thought we could start with your journey and experiences with Strand before talking about the company at large, RK. What brought you to Strand, and what do you think made it a good fit for you?
It's a funny story. About 8 years ago, I was just fresh out of my PhD, um, and I was going to move back to India. I definitely knew that.
Mhm.
I definitely also knew that for personal reasons I couldn't be in Bangalore.
Oh, okay.
So I come down here. And it's all great. I'm invited to talk at Strand. I think that's where we started. That's because my PhD advisor connected me to the founder of Strand, and so I was invited, to give a talk here, and it went well, I thought, and
Yeah.
then I never heard back, right? And so I was like, I was in central India at the time, and yeah, I had a few various other things going on, and like maybe these guys, maybe I'm sure they're not interested. Never heard back, and then suddenly Ramesh, the CEO, emails me one day. It's like, hey, what's up? We never heard back from you, and I'm like, all right, well, we I must have goofed somewhere. So anyway, I tell him, look, I can't be in Bangalore, but I'd love to join Strand. You guys sound great, and they were doing all kinds of things back then, especially in GPUs, and they were trying to get into sort of GPU programming and trying to accelerate, like normal bioinformatics pipelines,
Mhm,
standard bioinformatics pipelines, I should say.
mhm.
And it seemed very exciting. So I said, yeah, it's very exciting for me, but unfortunately, I can't be in Bangalore. How would it be if we were to do this remotely? And Ramesh, probably got back to me within a few hours, and then it's like, yes, it's fine. Just join us. It's all good. And so that was how I began at Strand.
Ooh, very cool. I actually didn't know that. That's awesome. Actually, speaking about Mr. Ramesh, that was my next question. Can you talk a little bit about him as a CEO and founder of Strand, and what brought him to start Strand up?
Um, you know, I'm very grateful to know Ramesh. Like, I think you probably hear a lot of people say that, and um, he's certainly the most energetic person I've ever known, right? And I think sometimes in my folly that I am energetic, but you should really look at him. He doesn't. I don't think he sleeps, the guy, right? Eh, and it's it's kind of I know he's probably going to be listening to some version of this podcast and like cringing, oh, don't say more good things about me, but he's, I think, used to it by now. He's sort of a very charismatic person, known to be very charismatic, also responsible for I mean, a lot of the innovations that Strand has brought in over the last 20 years, and we turned 20 this month. it's all been him, or I'm sure there's, I mean, not to discredit other people, but he's been sort of central, right? And you can really see that because um, not only is he the CEO, so he knows sort of the bird's eye view of everything, but he really gets his hands dirty, and he knows a lot of things, deep down, about things that you might imagine he may not know a whole lot about, like the lab, for instance, right? Because he's a computer scientist. You might think, hey, maybe he doesn't know a whole lot about the lab, but it turns out actually that, he's really thought through everything there is to know about the lab, right? Obviously, he probably can't do bench work, but that's just, I don't know, maybe he can, right? So he's one of those guys who combines ferocious depth with great breadth, and it's a real privilege to be a lot of why certainly I'm here at Strand today, I think, and where I am, and is due to him and a lot of the energy that he brings, and it's a pleasure to be working here with him, and it's a pleasure to be working for Strand, of course.
I think that definitely, I see that as well as someone who's only been at Strand in the work from home scenario, given that I joined 3 months ago in the middle of the pandemic. I feel like that culture has translated to every level. When we have group calls and we talk, you hear everyone say the same things about him and about how he's so kind and helpful, and there's this big emphasis on teaching and learning. And from what I've heard, it seems like it does come from him. So I can definitely see that. So like you mentioned, we're coming up on our 20th anniversary next week. Do you have any thoughts on what has given Strand this kind of staying power, especially in a market as large and volatile as biotechnology, precision medicine? Things are changing so rapidly. What do you think has allowed us to stay for 20 years and carry on and succeed?
Um, I'm going to be a little fanciful here, and everyone will have a different take on this. I think, it's a great question to ask a lot of different people at Strand, and but that's, I think, the key of it. There's a lot of different people here, right? You have people really Strand, and for me personally, this has been one of the key reasons I've really stuck on, is because I've always fancied myself both a kind of a hands-on person as well as a bit of a generalist. I like I like a bit of both, to be honest. I like the bird's eye view. I want to know what's going on and where something fits in, but I also want to know how to make something work, right? And you can I mean, and if you keep your eyes open at Strand, you can learn a lot about the nuts and bolts of pretty much all of precision medicine, in the 21st century as it's practiced, right? So, you just take any precision medicine application, right? So let's pick something completely at random, right? Like cancer therapeutics, right? Um, so you think about cancer therapeutics, you go, wow, it's so complex. There's so many moving parts. It's precision medicine. Maybe it's targeted. Maybe there's immuno-oncology involved, right? And it turns out that we have people at Strand who can probably address every single element of a standard pharma cancer therapeutics pipeline, and speak to it, at an expert level. I think that, and that's been a key part, I think, of our staying power is our diversity, and within that diversity, a lot of experience. So we have experience in, obviously in oncology. Our experience is vast. Our experience in inherited risk, in rare diseases is vast. Our experience in bioinformatics goes back all the way to the founding. The software, we have a huge team of software engineers now, and it's great tech we're building. So that, I think, is a big part of why we've been around for as long as we have.
Definitely. And I think speaking to that a little bit, that's where this idea came out, the idea of this podcast. As I said, we're going to be moving to a more explanatory kind of podcast. And the reason we came up with it was because we saw that we had so many experts in so many different fields that are willing to just sit and teach you and talk to you about all of these things. And I think that And that's only possible, like you said, because of the vast range of expertise we have here at Strand. So I can definitely see that. Um, yeah. So, like we just spoke about, Strand has created different types of products for different types of companies, and just there's so many of them. Are there any that you've worked on or that are coming up soon that you're particularly proud about or want to like highlight at all?
Yeah, no, there's a few. There's so we're talking about cancer.
Mhm.
So, you know, several years ago, perhaps now, Ramesh met, this person called Nishant, professor at the University of Chicago, and also, a clinician there, in a conference in India, and like, hey, we should do something together. And a couple years after that, 2018, that something sort of materialized into saying oral cancer is very high incidence in India.
Mhm.
How about we build uh, something being a test, and that test being a liquid biopsy test that works on, non-invasively on oral cancer patient.
Mhm.
Let's say saliva, right? So that's where we began building our saliva assay for oral cancer patients. So it's an NGS assay,
Mhm.
um, and we've tested it now on, um, yeah, 200, 250 patients. So it's still a research use type product, but we're publishing it later this month or maybe early next month. It's been accepted in the Journal of Cancer. Um, it has the potential to be hugely impactful. Um, and, that sort of, it really, I come from a world of tech mostly. For a long time, I was dabbling in writing software, and that's absolutely great and fantastic. That's key part of what Strand does. But it's also great to see that it's actually making, impact in people's lives. Has the potential, at least, to impact people's lives in these ways. And liquid biopsy is a great melding of sort of, some of the more geekier aspects of bioinformatics, where you really have to go deep down to figure out what's causing all the noise in your liquid biopsy test, because otherwise you'll never call those mutations at these very, very low frequencies. They're basically imperceptible in liquid. So, but they're there, and you need to be able to detect them, but you also need to discard the noise, and that's what our bioinformatics people did, and it was fantastic, and hopefully it'll be, a test that people use to diagnose early stage oral cancer. And that I mean, I was a small part of that team, not by any means central, in any way, but I'm very proud to have been even a small part of that.
Of course. Yeah, I've been following what's been happening on that aspect to some little part, and it's really cool and really fascinating. And even as someone who has nothing to do with it, it definitely makes you feel good to know that you're part of a company that's doing good work at the heart of it and doing things that are aim to improve people's lives. Um, Switching gears a little bit, as everyone knows and is constantly on our mind, and the reason we're doing this socially distance is we're in the middle of a pandemic. How has work from home affected you and your work specifically? How have you had to adapt to it? How have things changed? How are you dealing with it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, um, and everyone will relate to this in a different way. There isn't, we have to sort of acknowledge, and I want to straight up acknowledge the enormous toll psychologically and obviously, you know, medically that this pandemic has exacted from everyone here in this country and obviously in all parts of the world. um, I want to acknowledge that there have been people at Strand who have, you know, I'm not aware that anyone has passed, but certainly a lot of people have contracted COVID who are part of Strand. And, it's certainly something that, you know, eh, the work from home is an effect of protecting ourselves, and we should always be mindful uh, of that. And and having said that, though, I mean, I would just say for me personally, it's been more up than down. I enjoy the fact that meetings do happen and end on time, more or less. Whereas, in an office setting, it's very fluid. There's a lot going on, and an office is also a place to socialize as well as work. Whereas there seem to be no spaces anymore to socialize, whereas work continues as before. So, and that's the flip side, right? So, and you do see that a lot, right? I mean, you do miss the sort of routine, the camaraderie of being around other people, even if it is in a professional context. And that's taken its own toll. I know, and more on some people than on others. Some people have been left far from home, and some others have gone back home, which has been good for them in some ways, but you know sort of middling in some others. There's a reason why people have a distance between home and work,
Yep.
and it's
Definitely.
it's healthy. It's healthy for a lot of people involved, especially if you have small spaces like we do today in apartments and so on. Living with a very noisy dog, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
and being sort of in the same porthole as that dog can become stifling, for example. So there's I would say that this has been good for me, but I don't think that is true for a lot of people. It might be the opposite.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And I think I agree as well. Like I mentioned, I joined Strand 3 months ago. I've never seen any of my teammates in person, which is a bizarre concept, or at least it would have been a year ago, but we all adapt. And I mean, to your point of the small mercies, none of us have to deal with Bangalore traffic anymore, which is nice. Those 1.5 hour long commutes is definitely something I don't mind not having to do
Yeah.
anymore. But yeah, I guess it's a bit of both, and we should be thankful that we haven't had to deal with the brunt of it. Like I'm mentioning, we thankfully get to work at home. Most of our work happens on our computers, but even here at Strand, we have some people who are going into lab every day and who are having to work in lab. And can you speak maybe to how Strand has adapted that side of things for the people who are working in lab, who are part of the clinical teams? Can you speak to how Strand adapted to that, and how as a precision medicine company, we've really dealt with having people go in, I guess.
Yeah. So, at the outset of the pandemic, back when even people didn't even know if it was just an epidemic or an outbreak, or some people feared it was going to be a pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
We instituted a COVID test,
Mm-hmm.
and pretty much immediately, I think I remember March 17th or 18th was my last ever day at office this year, and pretty much immediately it was only those that needed to you know be doing that COVID testing that were going in,
Mm-hmm.
right? And there's a lot of people around, right? There's a lot of support and assistance around the lab, right? And it had they. I mean, we had only those that needed to going in at the very beginning, when the exact impact of this was unclear, and they were provided vehicles to and fro, to move to and fro, and um, protective equipment does exist in most of these places, and it was just really geared up, especially for people who work in places like microbiology, and people who handle patient samples, right? Because all samples, and even now this is the case, all samples could be infected. I mean, should be treated as infected, and that continues to be the case. I was talking to my colleague who's in the lab the other day, and he just had a small allergy, I think he thinks anyway. Not COVID, not the disease that should not be named, but yeah, he's required to report that, and he's required to self isolate and take a COVID test, right? So we I think I mean, and it's interesting that in Bangalore, I think things are returning more to normal than not.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, I think it's still the traffic is back, man.
Yeah.
It's back. I was out the other day, and it takes the same time to go of a certain distance. But as things are being returning to normal, I think people are. Uh, Despite the facilities available to them
Mm-hmm.
to be safe,
Mm-hmm.
they are perhaps not being as safe as they can be.
Yeah.
um, and I would entreat them, and yeah, I would hope that they are safe, and more, and a lot maybe for their parents as well. So yeah, it's interesting. I think, but otherwise I think we've been doing a good job. I think at the centerpiece of all this is the fact that now nobody goes into the office anymore this year, and that has been the case since mid-March, except for a few people who, so we moved out of our offices, and we have yet to decide where we want to move when we move again.
Mm-hmm.
And that has been key to, I think, controlling at least Strand employees contracting it,
Definitely.
though not completely. Obviously we still have employees, but due to other reasons contracting it. So yeah.
That makes sense. I think on that slightly somber note, I think we can end. Any last thoughts, RK?
I wanted to ask you, I mean, since you've been, so kind as to interview me, I mean, um, so what would you say, um, you know, and you've only been here, a few months, uh, and of course we become 20 this month, excuse me. We're 20 years old this month. What would you say to you has been, I'm going to ask you a difficult one, just maybe think through it, is what would you say how does Strand's age, right, maturity reflect, if at all, in the way you do your work on a daily basis?
That is an interesting question. Definitely not one I expected. Hmm.
I just made that up.
Yeah. No, that's cool. So I think there's a sense of establishment for sure. Although we do still have that startup vibe to some extent, being a company of 350 people, if I'm not mistaken. There is still that sense of, fun and not being too corporate and having that startup vibe. But at the same time, that there are processes in place, there are things that are established for sure. Like I briefly mentioned, the culture here at Strand is so positive. Everyone I talk to in our team, everyone I've spoken to so far has it really enjoys what they're doing and really seems to love working at Strand. And I think that can only come having been around for 20 years, really. That kind of culture, those kind of processes that come in place only, I think, will develop over time. And so I think in that way, it definitely our age of 20 years definitely has played a role. And I think the other aspect is, like you said, like we mentioned, a company, I like to think, does good work, right? Getting up in the morning, you feel good knowing you're working for a company that is trying to solve some solution, some problem in the world and create those solutions. And again, I think that comes from having been established in this field. So I think, yeah, that's where those 20 years, I think, have made a difference in my day to day for sure. So yeah. Uh, okay, great.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks so much, okay. I really enjoyed this conversation. This first time podcast. I think has gone pretty well. Thanks everyone for listening in, hopefully. If you have any questions or suggestions or feedback, please email me at sakshi.divija@strandls.com. That is SAKSHI .divija@strandls.com. If you want to learn more about Strand and our products and solutions, strandls.com is our website. And we're pretty active on our LinkedIn. We're trying to build it up, get our word out there. So please, go like it, subscribe, like it, join it, and follow us at Strand Life Sciences. Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks, RK. Bye-bye.